Molt bona tarda a tothom. Fa moltíssim goig veure aquesta sala tan plena. En nom del CCCB us vull donar la benvinguda a aquesta conversa amb Olga Tokarczuk, escriptora i Premi Nobel de Literatura del 2018, que coincideix amb la traducció a anagrama del llibre que li va valer el Nobel, Los libros de Jacob, una obra monumental que ens parla de la història i el present de Polònia i, per extensió, d'Europa. Vull donar les gràcies a l'autora per haver acceptat la nostra invitació, a la Sílvia CC i a tot l'equip d'Anagrama per la seva complicitat, a la Belén Llarena de l'oficina de la Presidència Espanyola de la Unió Europea i molt especialment també al Xavi Ayén, que és el nostre gran auscultador de Premis Nobel. Amb Olga Tokarczuk inaugurem avui el cicle Europa, una sèrie de converses que durant 4 dies reuniran al CCCB veus excepcionals del món de la literatura i el pensament per imaginar una altra Europa i rearmar-la intel·lectualment quan més ho necessita. Aquest cicle ha estat finançat per la Presidència Espanyola de la Unió Europea i és un dels seus programes culturals principals. Entre avui i dissabte comptarem amb les veus de 2 joves assagistes nascuts i formats a l'antiga Europa comunista com Lea Ypi i Srečko Horvat, amb Olivet Otel i Blanca Garcés per parlar de fronteres, raça i migracions, amb Matías Enar i Edurne Portela per parlar de literatura i amb Enzo Traverso per evocar l'empremta de la història al continent. Claurà el cicle un altre Premi Nobel de Literatura, John Coetzee, en diàleg amb Valerie Miles. El conjunt, com podeu veure, una constel·lació de veus, d'orígens i perspectives molt diverses. Constel·lació és precisament un concepte que Olga Tokarczuk utilitza sovint per referir-se a Polònia, a Europa i a la seva pròpia obra. La seva és sempre una mirada polifònica que inclou veus múltiples d'orígens, cultures i èpoques molt diverses. Olga Tokarczuk és una gran amant de les enciclopèdies i de la mitologia grega i es reconeix sempre de l'Europa central, un espai de fronteres canviant que va donar 4 passaports diferents a la seva àvia. Tokarczuk ens deia aquests dies que Europa és la millor idea política que s'ha inventat en l'últim segle i que segueix confiant en el poder de la literatura per configurar el món. D'aquest compromís neix la seva literatura i també la fundació que ha creat a la seva Polònia natal, un espai obert a la conversa internacional i compromès amb la llibertat d'expressió i els principis més bàsics de la democràcia. Moltíssimes gràcies per ser aquí, és un honor acollir-te i espero que puguem seguir treballant juntes des d'aquest compromís compartit. Endavant. Gràcies.
Bé, bona tarda a tothom. Només cal veure com està l'auditori i la gent que ho està mirant des de fora per la pantalla per adonar-nos que això és un esdeveniment. Estem molt contents de tenir l'Olga amb nosaltres. Jo, dels anys que fa que segueixo l'actualitat dels Premis Nobel, us puc dir, després de parlar amb molta gent del jurat, que una de les coses que els hi fa més gràcia és redactar la frase final i amb una sola frase condensen una obra monumental d'un autor i ho debaten molt i s'estan xerrant molt sobre com és la frase. La frase amb què l'Acadèmia Sueca va concedir el seu premi a Olga Tokarczuk és que li donaven per una imaginació narrativa que en passió enciclopèdica representa l'encreuament de fronteres com una forma de vida. No poden posar gaire subordinades, tenen unes normes estrictes. La primera vegada que vaig tenir l'honor d'entrevistar-la vam tenir mala sort perquè acabava d'esclatar la pandèmia. Llavors ella s'havia refugiat a la seva casa de camp. Estava feliç perquè ho comparava amb el de Cameró i podia estar tancada escrivint. Li acabaven de donar el Premi Nobel i no havia de recórrer mig món donant entrevistes com aquesta que està donant ara. Jo volia començar demanant-li si recorda aquell temps que va viure com si fos un personatge de Cameró de Boccaccio i si va ser fructífer aquell aïllament a la muntanya.
Yes, that we talk about it just before coming here on the stage, that I really dream to be retired and not to go around the world so intensively and stay at home. And I must say that this coronavirus time was very fruitful for me, and I was already prepared to come here to Spain. After the Nobel Prize, everything was fixed, and our suitcases were close to the door. And that at the day somebody called me that everything is gonna to be closed and there is a huge pandemic all over the world. And we called to you and said that it is impossible to travel anymore. And you said in a very optimistic mood, yes, come, it's not just the gossip, just come, just come. But then the next day when our flight was already fixed, it appeared that really airports are closed and it is impossible to travel anymore. So today I coming here just to fulfill those old invitation, and I'm here and everything is fine.
Ok. Olga Tokarczuk havia treballat com a psicòloga clínica i ho va deixar per dedicar-se plenament a la vida d'escriptora. Jo volia demanar-li, d'alguna manera, els psicòlegs també treballen amb la paraula com a eina, i de fet, burxant una mica pels arxius de l'Acadèmia Sueca, veiem que fins i tot Sigmund Freud va estar nominat al Nobel de Literatura, encara que no el guanyés. Quins records guardes d'aquell anterior ofici teu i si queda alguna cosa d'aquelles pràctiques que...
From the beginning, I was much more involved into literature than into psychotherapy and psychology. So, but my mother was the teacher of literature, and in a way, I decided to be psychologist against my mother. You know this state of mind when you are a teenager. So I studied psychology and then decided to be psychotherapist. It was hard work. Yes, you're right that this kind of job is, the fundament is kind of telling stories. So I was listener of these stories. And some of the stories were dark and traumatic, some interesting and bizarre. So I, in a way, trained myself in listening and understanding those stories. But from the other hand, I always was aware that I am also neurotic and I am also a little bit, not stable psychologically, but creative. Sometimes it goes together. So after some years of working as a psychotherapist, I had a feeling that from time to time I would like to say to my patients, you don't know anything about anxiety, about panic. I can tell you more than you can imagine. So then I realized that this is a good moment to say to myself, stop going in this direction. And then that was the moment I came back to writing. And I would like to say, just because it is important for me, that first of all, I am a reader, not writer. I always perceive myself as a reader and fascinated reader of many books, and I am crazy and obsessed because of books.
De fet, em sembla que algun cop has comparat, suposo que era una hipèrbole, escriure un llibre amb una psicosi.
Sorry, a book of
writing a book, you have...
Psychosis. Yes, this is the citate from Flight, I think. When it's a very special state of mind, I think, writing, because you have to be prepared for loneliness. You are alone all the time when you are lonely, when you are writing. There is no way to really explain what are you doing. What does it mean writing? You are sitting alone in your room and making some signs on the paper or on the screen, and everything, all those stories going in your mind. So it's a kind of, be a witness of paranoia in a way, that they are voices talking in your head. You have figures, you can conflicts between them. So you are totally devoted into this inner life. And then, which is always traumatic for me, there is a moment when the book is finished and you have to go out to the world and say something about my book, what I'm doing now. And this is completely different experience. You have to be open. It's an extrovertic experience, while the writing is very introvertic. So I always have a problem with this switching on these two tribes of my activity.
Tokarczuk no escriu com els altres escriptors, és a dir, obre nous camins, no? I potser el concepte que s'ha trobat per definir-ho millor és el de novel·la constel·lació. Què és això? Ens podries descriure breument el que és una novel·la constel·lació?
That was a time, I'm hearing myself here, that was a long time in my life, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was, when I traveled a lot. I was traveling a lot all around the world, not only because professional reasons as an author of books, but also I was obsessed with traveling. Perhaps the reason was that I had my first passport when I was 27 years old, because I grew up in a communistic Poland, and the Poland was closed completely. So the moment I got passport was something very important, very unusual. So then I decided to use this passport, really. So Flights is a very important book of mine, because I try to, first of all, I try to describe all of my travels. And then we had in literature such a books about traveling. It's a kind of genre you can find out in every single library. But I felt that in this contemporary way of traveling, this is not enough to use this old form. So I started to think about my own expression of this experience of traveling, of moving, of observing people who are traveling. And then I thought that we are living in the world which is, especially because of flying, which is not quite new way of traveling, that it's kind of, like popping up from in one place and then in the other place without this time we need to travel on the ground. So I had a feeling that it is like opening the windows in the computer, that you have many windows and you can just change from each other and to be in a different level of reality. You can change from, I don't know, gossiping about celebrities and into the politics and then into fashion, let's say, whatever. So our contemporary experience is different than the travelers from the past. They have like a linear experience going from one point to the other with those stops and overnights and so on. And now we are jumping, and I try to find a form, how to describe, how to be convincing for the reader that this is entire story of traveling, but written in small fragments, in these just popping moments somewhere in the place. And then I had just one metaphor came into my mind. That was like this. Perhaps it was somewhere when you are staying on the balcony or in the terrace. You can see the beautiful night sky, and you can see the point of the stars and planets. And then you have points. But then your mind is able to see figures. That's even more, because those figures they have a context in mythology. So you can see the stories, the conflicts, the lovers, for instance, escaping, and so on and so on. So then I told to myself that it could be a kind of novel written in small fragments, but to trust the reader's minds, that the reader's minds can collect all those small fragments, small stories into one constellation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I started to use this term constellation novel, and of course on the beginning people didn't know what I'm going to say, and also the critics were very critical, as they used to be. But now I think that this term constellation novel is just working. It really works, and sometimes I can see this way of describing the world, our experience, also in the books of another writers, which makes me happy, because this is not only my own experience.
És una mica semblant, llegir-li una novel·la Constel·lació és una mica semblant a mirar per el forat de l'Aleph, no?
Whole of my left?
No, l'Aleph, from Borges.
Like an Aleph letter.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
Reading you is a little like this, no?
Yeah, Borges is very meaningful for me. Yeah, so.
A la novel·la on justament més veiem tota aquesta idea del moviment, dels viatges, dels nòmades, no? És una novel·la que té un títol molt curiós, perquè el títol original, no sé si ho pronunciaré bé, és Bieguni, però en castellà es diu Los Errantes, en català es diu Cors, en anglès es diu Flights, en portuguès es diu Viagens, en francès es diu Le Pèlerin, i en italià I Vagabondi. I en alemany un rast, que vol dir sense parar. Què vol dir Bieguni?
Yes, this is very Slavic word, taken from biegać, means running. So biegun is somebody who is running all the time, also escaping. So bieguni, this is the name of Russian sect, a religious sect. They were very special. They used to live in 18th century in Russia, and they believe that you can be only the right Christian when you are staying in movement all the time. You have to move all the time, because if you stay, the devil will come and capture you. So the movement is the most human, the most religious condition, to be on move all the time. So when I visited Moscow, it was on the beginning, in the first decade of the 21st century, somebody told me that they are still alive, this sect in Moscow, and they are using a tube, Moscow tube, to be on move all the time. So they are sleeping in the tube, you know, and to be on move. So the only death is something which you can really be, you can stop to move. And I like this idea because it was so close to my understanding, not only in the meaning of physical movement, but also in a kind of psychological, intellectual movement, that you cannot be satisfied with this. You are just now in this moment. You have to just to make a step to another moment, be on move all the time. So Bieguni is this sect, and it was for me such a strong metaphor that I decided to use this metaphor for the entire novel. But only in Slavic languages this title stayed, and it was recognizable as a meaningful. But in other languages it didn't work. So that was the field for my translators to invent the new titles.
Molt bé. En aquest llibre en concret hi ha moltes dades sobre vostè, sobre ella mateixa, no? Els 1000 oficis que va tenir de jove, no? En una fàbrica, de cambrera, de Kelly en un hotel, de mainadera, venent llibres, bibliotecària, no? I fins i tot arribem a descobrir, no sé si és una dada correcta o no, que té un coeficient intel·lectual de 121, que això és molt, em sembla.
It is not so high. I know people with higher. No, it's an average for people who finish studying and can have an orientation in culture. That's the average level. I'm sure that if you are here, so you have more or less the same. Yes, that was a very important choice for this book, because this book, as I said, it's a collection of fragments and many places, many times, many figures. So only one way to keep everything together was to invent a very strong narrator. And when I thought about narrator, I like to think about who is telling the story. So then I realized that must be a strong narrator with strong voice and with a very strong characteristic. And then I invented this idea to describe my narrator also with the characteristic of blood, and this is in so many details, with all those small details to create her, in this case, as worthy to trust by the reader. And she is based on my biography, but not totally, not till the end. Not finally. I think that she is this narrator quite similar to me, but not me for sure.
Anem a parlar dels llibres de Jacob, Los libros de Jacob, que és la novel·la que s'ha publicat aquest any aquí entre nosaltres i que el mateix jurat d'Estocolm, com la crítica, reconeix que és la seva obra magna, el llibre més ambiciós que ha publicat, i que porta per subtítol Un viatge fantàstic a través de 7 fronteres, 5 idiomes i 3 religions principals, sense comptar les sectes menors. Bé, està tot resumit amb el subtítol, però m'agradaria saber una mica quin va ser l'origen, l'impuls inicial que va fer que et posessis a escriure aquesta obra de 1.100 planes, numerada al revés, per cert. O sigui, és un llibre que sempre saps les planes que et queden per acabar, perquè està numerat com un compte enrere, això és molt pràctic. Però volia saber quin va ser l'impuls inicial, si la figura del personatge, si alguna altra imatge.
It's a long story. Are you ready to listen? Yeah. If you believe in accidents, it was by accident, I would say. Once, when I was somewhere on the north of Poland, I visited a small bookstore with old books, and I found out the old booklet published by one of the university in Poland with Jewish study. And it was the words of Lord, which is the text written by acolytes of Jacob Frank. It is written in Polish originally, and is telling the story of their master, Jacob Frank. And it was written in 19th century in a very strange language, full of funny Hebrew words, and very interesting. So from the first moment I started to read this book, and I said, how it is possible? I don't know anything about this story. I am quite well orientated in Polish history. I never heard about Jacob Frank and such a crazy, adventures of those group of people, his acolytes and himself. So I bought this book and came back to home and started to make a research. And of course, at the time when I opened my computer, that was Wikipedia at the time, so there was only one sentence in Wikipedia about Jacob Frank. So I couldn't go into this direction. And then I started my travels around libraries and archives. And step by step, I collected the entire story. And I still didn't understand why this story was never fully told. And then, working on it, I understood why. There are 3 reasons, I could say. The first reason is that everybody had an interest to just forget the story, because it was so crazy and so painful for some people that they rather try to skip it, try to delete it from the common memory. The first of all, the Orthodox Jews were not interested to tell the story publicly, because for them Jacob Frank was a traitor. He was a dark figure in Judaism. He converted from Judaism into Catholicism, so left his nest in a very cruel and ugly way. So they try to forget about him. The second group involved into this forgetting was the Polish Catholic Church, because the role of a Polish Church was like an inquisition. So they captured Jacob Frank and imprisoned him in Częstochowa, in the monastery, and he was freed by Russian soldiers by accident, because there was a war at the time. And so he living in the monastery in Częstochowa for 12 years, he did a kind of blasphemy, because he created kind of heretic center in the very Catholic monastery in the center of Poland. So they really didn't want to remember this figure. And as a third group, the descendants of Jacob Frank, they converted into Catholicism, and they, in a very successful way, joined the Polish society. They became lawyers, scientists, bourgeois class. So they assimilated in a very good way, and they didn't want to mention about their Jewish roots in facing with the Polish, with the anti-Semitism in Poland. So you can see the situation when you have an incredible, full of a very adventurous story, and nobody like to remember this story. Everybody has interest to forget the story. So sometimes I had a feeling at the time that this story was waiting for me, and my first idea was to write an essay about it.
Nice.
Just small essay, and to publish somewhere in the literary magazine and so on, and then to...
A short text.
Short, yeah, then to close the story. And then when I started to read more about Jacob Frank and to study about this religion, the complicated liaisons with Turkey, with religious, with small sects, and I think that I, in a way, how to say, I became like a close friend to those figures, and I started to be on their side. They were a small group of Jewish merchants traveling all the time from Turkey to Poland. At the time, Poland had a border with Turkey, which is now perhaps sounds strange, but it is true. So they were quite poor people, merchants, and as I said, all the time on move. So, and another reason why it was so interesting for me, the story takes place on the beginning in the area which is now in Ukraine, but before the Second War it was the Polish state territory, and that was the place where my family were from. So I could recognize from the family stories the names of the towns and villages and so on. So I felt once again much more attached to the story. I felt a little bit like the story is also mine. Mm-hmm.
Això que diu dels territoris és interessant perquè sembla, ja sabem que no és així, però sembla que hagi escrit aquesta novel·la especialment per aquest cicle sobre Europa, perquè realment té lloc a molts llocs europeus, a llocs coneguts de Polònia, de l'actual Ucraïna, a llocs que es diuen Podòlia, Valàquia, que són llocs reals, i amb uns personatges que van d'un lloc a l'altre i que no s'entenen entre ells perquè parlen molts idiomes. Llavors és aquesta idea també d'Europa com el lloc de la traducció. Jo voldria demanar-li com era aquella Europa de finals del segle XVIII i què queda d'ella.
You have to remember that it was the time before the idea of national states. So Europe was a crowded, creative place full of people speaking many languages, and perhaps in a bad way in every single language, which I like very much. Because the idea of the pure language is also coming from 19th century. The people started to be obsessed with the clarity and pureness of the language. So I could imagine this part of Europe as a kind of melting pot of many cultures and ethnos and many languages. Meeting each other, crossing each other. It was a very similar situation like Hellenistic Southern Europe. So, and in such a situation, you can imagine how the ideas are exchanging all the time, how people can lend and borrow ideas, words, customs. And for me, it was also very important at the time, this Jewish presence in Europe, in my part of Europe. Because unfortunately, thinking about Jews in Europe, very often we stop on Holocaust. And it's such a, this very traumatic experience sometimes stopped us from asking questions about history of Jews in Europe, how it appeared that they came to Poland and to eastern part of Europe. What is the story of those people who was born in Spain, for instance, or Portugal, and then found themselves in cities of Germany, and then were pushed east, far and far. And in a way, at that time, there is such an expression that that Poland is a paradise for Jewish people. At the time, it was quite good. They were merchants. Sometimes there were small towns in Poland in which the Jewish population was 70% or 80%. So this Jewish presence was for me, and still is, a very fascinating subject all the time. I have also said that I cannot imagine Polish culture without Jews. Perhaps we are Polish and Jewish. We created in this part of Europe kind of new culture, which is so so close to each other, so mixed with customs, languages. There are many Jewish words in Polish language and vice versa and so on. So that was a very specific time of living together, all those two ethnos. Yes, Jacob Frank, he didn't know Hebrew. His roots were, his ancestors came from Spain. He spoke Ladino quite well. He was born in this Podole, which is the now Ukraine, then in past in Poland. But culturally, he was a Sephardic Jew. So it's also in this one figure, it's such a mixture. And in the end of his life, he insisted to learn Polish, and he forbidden speak in Hebrew and in oh God, I forgot.
Ladino?
Not Ladino. That's no, but Yiddish, of course.
Yiddish, okay.
In Yiddish, his own people in his group, so they were they had to speak Polish. That's why these words of Lord are written in Polish. Mm-hmm. So it's also the history of languages but first of all, for me, this is a story about assimilation. How the newcomers are coming from somewhere and trying to join into the society and trying to negotiate what can we take with us to this new situation, what have we left behind us, and the language was one of these things they had to leave behind.
Mm-hmm. És un personatge que, tot i aquests orígens hispans o de la península, doncs també és desconegut aquí. Estic segur que molts lectors pensaran que és un personatge de ficció, si no arriben fins al final i veuen les notes o si no googlegen una mica. No només ell és l'únic personatge real, perquè per curiositat un es posa a buscar i veu que molts personatges secundaris també van existir, no? Des del capellà al començament, un capellà que viatja perquè vol escriure un llibre que contingui tots els llibres i tot el coneixement del món, no? En una sola obra, perquè la gent la tingui a casa seva, no? I la pugui consultar fàcilment en un sol volum. No?
Yeah.
Aquí deu haver potser una mica de ficció amb aquesta recerca que ell feia o no, o realment ell s'ho va... De fet, és autor d'una de les obres que surten esmentades. No?
You mean about Chmielowski?
Yeah.
Priest Chmielowski.
Chmielowski, yeah.
Chmielowski. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the idea of this book is quite simple, because Jacob Frank is a very ugly character. I think that in the modern terms, he is psychopath. He was psychopath, and sometimes he did such things that it was painful to write about it. So I created a kind of tribe of telling this story, that Jacob Frank is always seen from outside. So then I need all those characters to tell about him, who is he, and then I have an endless amount of small points of view on him. But the book is very good, founded on facts and archives and so on. So working on it, I visited libraries and so on, and then I noticed once, by accident, if you believe in accidents, that at the same area, some kilometers from the place when Jacob Frank was very active, a very modest Catholic priest used to live. His name was Chmielowski. And then I realized, oh my God, this is the same Chmielowski who is very famous in Poland because of one sentence. And everybody was laughing from this historical figure because he tried to write an encyclopedia. You have to imagine that this is the same time when in France, Diderot and all those people writing this famous encyclopedia, which is, you know, one of the greatest deed of humankind, I would say. And on the other hand, you have poor priest Chmielowski, who tried to write a very modest book about everything, but he doesn't know anything. So he have like 20 books in his parish, and he tried to, you know, make he tried to describe the world. So he is writing just the rubbish, the full of stupidity. And this famous sentence from his encyclopedia sounds like this. I don't know if I can now translate. The horse is like everybody can see. That's all. This is the definition. So, but from the other hand, this figure of the poor priest writing his own encyclopedia was so tender for me, so moving. Then, you know, that at the time the Enlightenment ideas had their own momentum. So those Enlightenment was going from the west to the east, and this small poor priest is a kind of part of this Enlightenment. He doesn't have any tools to write this encyclopedia, but he tries to join this movement. And also, at the time, in this part of Europe was very popular idea of Pansofia. Pansofia, invented by Comenius. They believe, could you imagine? They believe if the man or woman will have access to the knowledge, to the information, the people will change into angels. The world will be peaceful and nice and, you know, ideal. And we can say something about it, having access to the internet, to the details and knowledge. The world is not better in any single piece. But they believe it. So the priest Chmielowski was, I noticed at the time that they are living so close, so that was a great temptation to use his to this entire story. And I'm sure that at the time it was very probable that they meet somewhere, Jacob Frank and Ksiądz Chmielowski.
Quan parla de diferents personatges i punts de vista, el punt de vista és una de les grans fites de la narrativa de Tokarczuk. Aquí fins i tot tenim el punt de vista de Yenta, que és una persona que s'està morint, que està a la vegada morta i viva, i que és com una narradora omniscient, però que existís físicament i que pot sortir del seu cos i observar. O sigui, podries parlar-nos d'aquesta persona que no sabria, no és una tercera persona, no és una primera persona, d'aquest narrador moribund, diguem-ne.
I used to call her the fourth person narrator, because we used to have three of them, but now it's this higher instance of telling the story. On the beginning, it was a technical invention, because writing this book, I very quickly started to be aware that it is too much information, too much plots, too much figures to keep everything together. And then I desperately needed such a highest point of view on everything. And then I invented Yenta as a character who is not only higher, but it's omniscient, as you said, and even she is able to see entire process of writing this book. The very careful reader can see how the Yenta is telling story in the last pages of the book. She can also see me as an author working on the computer. So she's, really, her position is nearly like godlike a little bit. But then, thanks to her, thanks to this very high point of view, I could collect together all those complicated small plots and figures and complete this book after 8 years of work.
Quan feia un moment parlaves de tota la tasca de recerca que fas, que és molt profunda, molt meticulosa, i que has dit que és una de les coses que més t'agraden, em demanava si altres detalls de la novel·la també estan documentats, perquè poden semblar fruit de la teva imaginació, o no sé, penso en les escenes orgiàstiques que es produeixen amb aquesta secta, penso en el preu amb zlotis de les persones que es venen al mercat com a esclaus. Tot això està documentat i és una recreació de fets reals?
asking me about a special technique I invented once again. Because it's the facts taken from archives, from documented facts taken from history. They were thousands of them. I check everything, and also in double checking helped me the editors from my publishing house. There are many funny stories. I make one digression. For instance, when I was writing about that sometimes they have had to eat something, so then I imagined that they eat potatoes, which are very popular in Poland. But I didn't have any idea that at the time, in the second part of 18th century, the potatoes were not known in this part of Europe. So just before to go to the printing house, the editors just remove those potatoes from the from pages of my books, and we exchange potatoes with rice. Rice was very popular at the time in Poland. Can you imagine? Because they transported rice from Turkey. I didn't know it. So there were many such a small, mistakes and so on. But the book is very well based on historical facts. But sometimes you have like two historical facts. That Jacob Frank was, let's say, somewhere in Krakow, and then in a few days they came to Warsaw, for instance. And it was in the middle of January. So the work for my imagination was to fill the gap between this Krakow and Warsaw, to tell how they possibly travel and what was the weather at the time. I could imagine that in the middle of January it should be very cold in Poland. So then I had to, use that they had the very heavy clothes and so on and so on. So that was my work for imagination, but the rest is really very well documented. And sometimes when the facts were very painful, there is such a scene when there is a kind of judgment in the cathedral in Lviv, and discussion between Orthodox Jews and Jacob Frank group. Some arguments are very painful, they are very anti-Semitic and so on. So, and going into very dangerous direction. So then I used the text from archives. So there are many citates in the text. Mm-hmm. And there is only one citate which is in the middle of the book. This is the letter of the Polish king giving to the Frankists freedom of traveling in Poland, and we can say now just like something like human rights in Poland. So then I took this letter in general, in entire text, and it is written in the old Polish language, so it's quite, I don't know how the translator managed to do that, but I'm sure that it's well done.
Okay, sure. Parlem una mica del que, de fet, és la història d'un Messies i, per tant, hi ha moltes referències religioses, fins i tot en el mateix llenguatge, de com s'expliquen les coses, de quina manera, amb les històries paral·leles, històries dintre d'històries, fins i tot l'estructura mateixa del llibre. Un s'imagina que si aquell llibre se'l troba algú d'aquí 10 segles, després d'una catàstrofe nuclear, es pot fundar una religió, una civilització sobre aquest llibre, no? Si algú no sap que és ficció.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Religion is a very complicated subject in this book. It's a very complex, and you know that I removed finally from the book like 50 pages of all those religion disputes and discussions and, all those things, because I decided that it will be too heavy. But this book is written also for people who are interested in history, and we have now Google, so you can Google everything about Sabbatism, Shabtai Tzvi, about Frankism, about Gnosticism. This is incredible how sometimes how we simplify all those religious subjects. We have a picture that Christianity is rooted very deeply in Europe and is growing and for this 2,000 years. But in the meantime, there were many kind of small revolutions, heretic revolutions, and some of the religious movements are immortal, I would say. So one of these is Gnosticism, which is still quite present in our thinking and in heresy still existing in the religious life. And I was very I tried to catch all those small lines and put them together. Jacob Frank was fascinated by Shabtai Tzvi, who treated himself as a messiah, and quite big group of Jewish people also went on his side, and this huge messianistic movement in Europe and in Asia at the time was very serious, especially towards Orthodox Judaism, but also was visible in Europe, in Christian Europe. So idea of messianism was taken from Judaism to Europe. And in Poland it was especially strong. With our Polish Romanticism, entire literary movement is based on mysticism taken from Jews. As I mentioned before, all those exchanging of ideas. And it was fascinating to me to think about messianism as a kind of Gnosticism, reviving Gnosticism in Europe. And what I did, so I tried to look for references for this idea, and I found out all those references. So if the people are interested in this, they can find the story of this heretical, non-orthodox movement, which is extremely interesting for us nowadays because it a little bit changed the perspective of in looking on our own culture in Europe. Yeah.
El Premi Nobel ha servit sobretot, o sigui, l'Olga Tokarczuk és igual de bona escriptora abans que després del premi, però ha servit sobretot perquè li comencem a llegir molts més llibres que no estaven traduïts. S'ha de dir que el seu debut novel·lístic de l'any 93, que el títol seria una cosa com El lloc de la gent del llibre, està ambientat als Pirineus, no? Em sembla?
Of the book.
Sí.
Yes, that's funny. This book is a long time. I insisted not to republish this book in Poland because I felt that it is like a teenager book about, idea how to write a book. At the time, I was locked in Poland. I didn't have my passport, so everything I knew about the world was taken from the books I read. So perhaps you living here close to Pyrenees, for us could be funny sometimes what I invented, how the Pyrenees looks like. But I check everything in encyclopedia and imagine that it should be like this. But the story is quite simple but very metaphoric. It's like a fairy tale a little bit about the group of people who believed once again in the holy book, which was given by the God to the people, and the people just hidden this book somewhere here close to Barcelona in Pyrenees. And if we find out this book, we will, once again, an angel. There will be peace all over the world. We will be happy and, peaceful creatures and so on. So once again, this idea coming back in the next of my books. It looks like I'm writing the same book, but from the different points of view.
Your books are very different.
Different, yes. But the idea is still, appearing from time to time, from one book to the other.
Un llibre que sí que ens ha arribat és un lloc anomenat Antany, que retrata la gent que viu en un poblet i que està basat bastant en la història de la teva família, no? Em sembla.
You mean, the primeval, yes, and the other times it is in English.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, yes, this is my third book. Yeah, nice book. Quite simple story about, written in a way, a little bit like Marcus used to write, but much simpler, full of fantastic creature, but telling the part of the Polish story, Polish history.
S'ha de dir que, clar, després d'haver escrit els llibres de Jacob, tots els altres li semblen molt simples. Del llibre Cos, Los Errantes, allà vam conèixer, per exemple, un cas secundari, no és l'eix del llibre, però està el cas de Soliman, que és una persona de raça negra que és dissecada, que era una persona erudita, que sabia molt, però que per el color de la seva pell va ser exhibida com a peça de museu, que és una cosa que ens pot recordar aquí a nosaltres el negre de Banyoles. També a los llibres de Jacob hi apareix una verge negra també que pot recordar-nos alguna cosa. I amb els llibres de Jacob també parla molt dels Wunderkammer, no? Hi ha un moment que apareixen aquesta mena de llocs on s'exhibia tot tipus d'objectes i persones dissecades, tot això. Si podia explicar-nos una mica la seva fascinació per aquests Wunderkammer i per tot el que s'hi exhibia.
Flights des Errantes. Yeah, this is my favorite book, really.
Really? No.
I like this book very much, and I know how difficult it is to tell what is the book about. Okay. So you can say that there is the black man, there is a funny journey on ferry into the open ocean. There are some missing women, and you can, just mention many plots of this book. But it's really hard to say what the book is about. For me, on a very personal level of understanding this book, is about looking for something which is stable in our existence, and discovering in the end of this book that only one stable place or thing which we have is our human body. This is our container in which we are closed and in which we are traveling all around the world. So it was a kind of opposition, those being on move all the time, physically, psychologically, intellectually, and having the body which is so fragile and going directly to the very physical end. So then I try to make this kind of opposition and to move all the time between this opposition. And my personal interest in all those things which are bizarre, strange, is just a characteristic of this narrator, which is looking in the world something which is always on periphery of our perception, which we don't want to see, which we are suppressing, forgetting, and which used to come back to us as a horror, as something which, yes, is a dark side of our existence.
Una altra novel·la seva que té molts partidaris és sobre els ossos dels morts, que d'aquí pocs dies veurem al Festival Temporada Alta la versió teatral que ha fet una companyia britànica, la Complicité, i que ha estat definit com una mena de novel·la policíaca, metafísica, ecologista, on els caçadors comencen a aparèixer assassinats. I bueno, no sé, volia...
Don't tell this. This is the detective story.
Està en la solapa.
Really? Okay.
Sí, jo ho he vist a la solapa i el resum de l'obra de teatre.
Okay.
It's not my fault.
Okay.
Què ens pot dir d'aquesta obra? Quin va ser l'impuls? Va ser una obra polèmica, em sembla, que et van arribar a acusar de terrorista fins i tot per això.
I am always controversial. This book, it's a funny story with this book because I got a scholarship, a grant for writing a book, and then I went to Netherlands, and I was supposed to write Jacob's book. So the most of the day I spent working on Jacob's book, looking for something, checking, creating, making the list of characters and so on. And at the time this book, this detective story appeared in my head, and then I felt like a tension to write something different than this Jacob book, which was so, intensive. And then I took a small table, the second table, to my room, and on one big table was Jacob book, and on small table was this detective story. And in the evenings, when I was tired with the working on Jacob's book, I changed my place and working on this detective story. So it's funny, and it's really now hard to imagine, even for me, how I managed to do these two things together at the same time. I don't know. But the truth is that they were written at the same time. And the idea was to do something for fun. And also, writing Jacob's book for 8 years, it meant at the time that I don't have any new book for 8 years. And I need something to eat and live. So that was also the reason to write this detective story. At the time it was in fashion in Poland to write detective story. It was such a strong genre. And then I decided to write detective story to earn some money. So I started from the dead body, of course. It must be on the beginning. And then the genre is so easy to manage, because then you have to create some ideas how it could look in who is the murderer, and just to make some plots, and then to show who is the murderer. Easy. It's a kind of like a form, like children used to make form from the sand on the beach. So, but then I had a feeling that it's wasting of paper to write about, just to know who is the murderer. And then I always be very obsessed by the animals and by hunting. Why I live in the countryside, so I can see every single Sunday how they are hunting, and there is no law how to stop them. And I didn't understand. They are full, they have a supermarkets, they are not hungry people. So what is the reason to kill all those poor deers and the wild bears and so on? So then I started to create the plot in the direction, in the direction to make to discuss with this policy of hunting. And yeah, that's the book comes from my very deep saying no towards the hunting, and also towards all the suffering of animals. So I created Duszejko, the old woman who is quite eccentric, but well educated. He is living far from the big cities, living alone, having only 2 dogs, and he calls her dogs her daughters. So this is the beginning, this is the first scene. And once the dogs disappearing, they disappeared, and what else? This is the content of the book. And we cannot say who is the murderer.
No,
But
no.
for me, this book was very something just very light, something written in between the much more serious, as I thought at the time, work. But I really didn't expect such a big success of this book all over the world. And then the book was translated into first languages and then went broader and broader. And then somebody told me that in Canada is a small society somewhere in a small village on the north of Canada, and the society is in the name of Janina Duszejko, and they gathering together, discussing about animal rights and so on. And I said, oh my God, it works. And then when Complicité decided to make a theatrical piece, and of course I knew them, and I knew that this is one of the best theater company all over the world. So I said that it is impossible that Duszejko is now so well-known figure, literary figure. So if you have a time and possibility, please go and see this theater, because it's a really very deep experience, very, very well done. You will be moved.
Okay. És que amb aquesta recomanació teatral, molt ràpidament, hi ha molts premis Nobel que després del premi creen una fundació, no? La majoria la dediquen a promoure la literatura o joves autors, no? Tenim la Fundació Saramago pels autors de llengua portuguesa, tenim la Càtedra Vargas Llosa per autors en espanyol, García Márquez ha creat una fundació per promoure el periodisme, va crear-la, i tenim una Fundació Olga Tokarczuk, però la seva té un caire ben diferent. M'agradaria que ens parlessis una mica, ara en aquests moments finals, abans de donar torn al públic, què fa la teva fundació?
When I got a Nobel Prize, of course I was happy, but I was also confused that this is only one Nobel Prize a year, and I got it, and I have to do something, like I have to do something for better for somebody. So I took my friends, we gathered together, and that idea was to make a foundation and to give the foundation my ideas, what I'm interested in, what I'm thinking about, what I'm obsessed, what fascinates me, what I understand to be, it should be done, and so on. So my foundation was received also by local government in a very enthusiastic way. So they helped us to fix ourselves in a small house in Wrocław, in my city. And now we are working, and the main subject is, there are some such main themes in this foundation we are doing. So the first one is, as I am feminist, so all those things connected with women, education, equal rights, and so on, but also animal rights. Just today, at that time, you can find the internet. There is a streaming of seminar of about animal rights, and this line is called "From Animal Perspective." So every single month. We used to make such a seminar. It is streaming, and we are preparing the subject. And we also doing a huge literary summer festival in Poland, which I am very proud of this idea, because as you know, or perhaps don't know, we have a very difficult cultural situation in Poland, and many people living in Poland, they don't have access to the true information, to the higher culture. So we decided to make this festival on the province, the small town in Poland. And this year, in July, it was an incredible, successful event with thousands of people taking part in it. So I'm proud that this foundation is like my persona. You know what I mean? In psychology, we have this kind of screen, like between the word and between this fragile ego I have as a writer. So foundation is something which protect me and also doing something for the rest of the world.
Okay. I la darrera qüestió que jo faig és on seràs dijous vinent? Saps on seràs dijous vinent? Saps què passa dijous vinent?
Next Thursday. No?
The new Nobel Prize. The announcement. The Nobel announcement. Aquest dijous hi haurà un altre escriptor que serà tocat per la vareta dels acadèmics suecs i que haurà d'afrontar els problemes i les coses bones que també té que ha hagut d'afrontar l'Olga. Doncs ara obrirem un torn de preguntes del públic. Si us plau, aixequeu la mà perquè us puguin veure i apropar el micròfon.
We talked a bit about the literature, but literature also connects with...
Where you are?
I'm here.
Okay.
But literature also connects with politics. And I remember before you received the Nobel Prize, there was an interview with a leader of Polish conservative, nationalistic party, which is ruling in the country right now. And they asked this person, Jarosław Kaczyński, what's the book that he's reading right now? And he mentioned your book, the Jacobs books. I know that the writer doesn't have an impact on who is reading their books, but do you feel that the books could have impact on the people that they are reading them?
But as far as I know, he didn't finish this book. So perhaps it would be better for all of us if he could come to the end. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Congratulations for your work and your example, Olga, in here. And I think it's kind of a related question. It was mentioned that you say that Europe is the best political project that we have right now. No? And it's an easy question. No? What are the main threats for this project of rights and diversity, cultural diversity, and so many good things, and how literature can help to overcome these threats?
Mm-hmm. You can see how the literature is powerful. It collected us together here, somewhere in Barcelona with Polish writer. So I think that literature is a very, very deep way of communication. In a very, very subtle and sophisticated way, we can understand each other, and always going down into the depth of our psyche. So thanks to literature, we can recognize that we are not so different from the rest of the people we used to think, you know, being manipulated by media or, I don't know, the authoritarian judgment or so on. So telling the story is, it sounds sometimes very, you know, serious, but telling the story is the way when we are keeping ourselves together, and every single society has to have the story, and also the bigger society, and Europe has to have their own story. And we can say that there are so many European books which are making us equal. For instance, for me, such a book is my favorite, Magic Mountain. Everybody can read this book, and you can have in this book, you know, all those themes and subjects and ideas and images we are still thinking of. So I don't know how to really answer. On the beginning, when the threats were so strong, we were not accustomed to this kind of discussion, let's say. But now I can say from myself that I don't read all those things, and I try avoid. It's a suppression. I know this mechanism of defense, but yeah, we should do what we are supposed to do. That's all. In my case, it's writing.
Hi havia un micròfon donat, no? Allà, no?
Dobry wieczór. Pani Olgo, well, thank you for being here. I'm
you
very
have to
glad.
speak English because nobody will understand us.
No, I know that. So I would like to ask about your translations because, well, your translators. I read your books in Polish, but since they are so complex, I'm always thinking about translating them. I think it must be very difficult. And actually, I read Prawiek in Polish, and then in Spanish, it's called Un lugar llamado Antaño. I compared the two versions, and I have to say they are very good. Well, it's very good translated. Flights are also very good translated. So can you tell us a little more about your translators and the collaboration? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I used to keep very close distance with my translators, and I treat them as a kind of family. So there is a Facebook page which we used to collect it together, and they are discussing, translators discussing the problems with translating and so on. And from time to time, also thanks to my foundation, we are doing a congress of my translators. And they are coming to Wrocław, and we are drinking wine, talking, gossiping. And it's such a pleasure to be with them. And they are much more than my ambassadors in different languages. They are very clever people. And sometimes I think that it would be easier to write something than to translate something. Yeah, I wrote a text about translators as a contemporary gods Hermes. They are like Hermes, you know, transgressing borders, and they are conveying ideas from place to place, from language to language, from one culture to the other culture. So, yeah, thank you for this question.
Hello, it's so nice to see you here. Actually, me and my friend, we were supposed to come here 3 years ago. So we said like 3 years later, better late than never. I just wanted to say, as an owner of a vegan restaurant, that through your books you encourage people to stop eating animals.
Really?
Not directly, but like it's not you saying it directly, like stop eating animals. But of course, it's the message, right? So my question is, in the foundation that you run in Wrocław, do you also have any campaigns about, like you told about animal rights, but also are there any about convincing people to stop eating or reduce it?
Thank you. Many readers told me after this book that they stop eating meat, and at least they are started to think about eating meat, and that there's something wrong with this idea, why we have to eat bodies of dead creatures, the beings. But yes, in the foundation, just recently, a few days ago, I went there with friends and with my family. There is a small restaurant, vegan restaurant, and now it's very popular in Wrocław. So it's in the building of our foundation on Krzycka Street 29. If you will be in Poland, you can visit this restaurant. And I am so happy. When we went just on Sunday, I was staying like this and looking with such a proud that there was full restaurant with children, with animals, with dogs, and so on. People were sitting and eating, mushrooms, vegetables, everything, but not meat. Yeah, it's changing. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here. I have a related question here. Yes, related question to that one. Actually, two questions. One is, if you could talk a little bit about how William Blake sort of influenced. I don't know if you brought him into the book already having an idea, or if he took you in that direction. That is the first part of the question. And the other one is, if you know and can recommend other authors who are also trying to tell stories with a plurality of voices, especially non-human voices, animals or the earth and nature in general, that you can recommend that are doing good literature with this idea of looking at the world from different points of view.
Just recently, somebody asked me about the same. So just recommending for recommendation, but I don't know really who is writing like this. But that the reason why that's why this question is asked so often about the new perspective. It only shows that this is something very energetic, very, very vibrant, that people are thinking about it. I don't know, I try to do this kind of find new perspective in flights, to tell the story from the different points of view. But it's also interesting that for the trip to Spain, I took a book of Gerard Durrell about animals. You know this. And I cannot read it now. It's too cruel for me now. So it only shows that also our sensitivity is changing all the time. We are different than 20 years before. That's good. That's good. We are on move. Your first question about Blake. By accident, if you believe in accidents. That was funny. Funny idea, because when I 30 years ago I moved out from Wrocław, from the big city, and we bought a small house in the countryside. So I thought that I will be there, and I'm still there, but much more now, traveling and so on. And at the time, it was a kind of interesting piece of land where many artists used to settle And then it happened that there were 3 translators of William Blake into Polish. And then very quickly, we became friends with all of them, and we started to do like a small seminar with Blake's. And they showed me who is Blake and what is his poetry. And I still really don't understand my fascination. He's, I don't know, crazy guy, and this poetry is so simple, sometimes looking very naive, is so strong still. So I decided to join the William Blake into this book because I can imagine that he would be the favorite poet of my Janina Duszejko. That's all. Thank you.
Tenim temps per un parell de preguntes més. Després l'autora signarà llibres.
Hi, I have a microphone here. I have a question that probably was asked already. What are you reading now? Because you said you're a reader more than a writer. Mm-hmm. Or if you're not reading the book that you have with you, what is really good book that you read within like this year? And like a sub-question I would have is like, what book that you read ever in your life would you recommend to someone like?
No.
No?
No. There is no such a book. They are different, like children, you know, in the class. There is no one the best.
No. Mm-hmm. It's not about the best book. But would you recommend to a person that you would like to change his mind or open his heart? Like somebody asked before about our country kind of leader that didn't finish your Jacob's book. So what would be another book that you would recommend for this person to read to maybe open his heart and soften up? That's the full question, not the best book. Thank you.
I don't know, really. Perhaps holy book, just. I don't know. I think that we need books for a special times in our lives. So sometimes what I also noticed that the book I like so much 20 years ago, they don't work right now. They're completely far from my nowadays sensitivity, and because we are changing also as a readers. There is no such a book I come back all the time. Now what I'm reading, I'm always reading. I took 2 books for this trip to Spain. One is this Gerard Durrell, and the other one is The Land of Urlo, Blake once again, of Czesław Miłosz, because I was asked to write a postword to this book, so I have to read it very carefully. And this is the second reading of this book. I read this 20 years ago, and now I can see completely new things, of course. I haven't seen it in the past. I didn't see them. So, I don't know. I do believe that we should keep our paper books in our houses somewhere. We should have a space in a room, because I don't believe in those books in internet, in our laptops and so on. Mm-hmm. There will be one day, and I don't want to be apocalyptic like Janina Duszejko, then electricity will go out for a moment, or for 2-3 days or 1 month, and all those books in the net, they disappear. And it's such a pleasure to keep the paper book, and you can open it and smell and just put on the shelf and come back to this book, and make notes. So I renovate a barn in my house, and now we are doing a library, so collecting books, old favorite books, old and new, and for the worst day.
And the last question.
Okay. Hello, Olga.
Hi.
First, congratulations. Yes. And what I would like to ask you, if you're working on the new book, and I kind of would like to encourage you maybe to work on something that you can find history in the archives in this region, because Podróż Ludzi Księgi. Yes, you probably didn't know, as you told us today, that you didn't even have a passport at that time. But the people started in France, and they went through Pyrenees, and they found Catalans. And this is this region. Yes, we have Spanish and Catalans in the same territory at the moment. So this is just a thought, just a thought. If you would like to, try to look in some archives and try to look some, your books are based on the history, so authentic history. So that would be a help for this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. This is just a statement, not question. Or do you want me to?
If you are working, the question was at the beginning, if you are currently working on any other book at the moment.
At the moment, yes. After the Nobel Prize, I wrote a collection of short stories and book which was published last year in Poland called Empusion, but it was a kind of small works. And now I'm coming back to the work, to the real work, and this book will be also historical in a way, because it takes place after the Second War on Silesia. So showing the time of kind of without rules, very cruel after the Second War, but also it's people trying desperately to create a new society. So it's a lot of work. I came back to the archives. I'm doing research and so on. But I think that the book will be in 2025 or 26 in Polish. Thank you.
Doncs se'ns ha acabat el temps, malauradament. Moltes gràcies a tots per haver assistit aquí, tant els que sou dintre com els que sou fora, i us recordo que l'autora ara amablement signarà exemplars dels llibres.
Thank you so much.